Welcome to the first segment in our new On the Quayside series, where we aim to meet up with and engage with many of the interesting maritime citizens from across the continent. In recognition of Women's Day and Women's Month here in South Africa, we are dedicating the Quayside this month to the inspiring women in the maritime industry. But this does not mean that the conversations will be restricted to addressing women's issues only. We are kicking off our Quayside chats with Clare Gomes, Executive for Strategic Planning and Communications at AMSOL. AMSOL is positioned as a market leader in South Africa for specialist marine solutions and a leading employer of South African seafarers. Clare has more than 20 years of experience in the maritime industry with a particular career focus on brand development, corporate and crisis communications, and thought leadership. Most recently, together with a group of women in business, Clare relaunched the Women's International Shipping and Trading Association in South Africa. The association aims to bring women active in many subsectors together to network, share insight, grow their businesses, and support young women beginning their career journey. So, with that introduction, I'm Colleen Jacker, editor of Maritime Review Africa, and I'm looking forward to having a candid conversation with Clare this morning on our new segment On the Quayside. Okay, we've heard a little bit about WISTA in the introduction, and I'm interested to know what prompted you at the point when you relaunched. Was there a pivotal moment, or what prompted you to relaunch WISTA in South Africa at that time?
Well, yeah, just from the outset, I must say WISTA was active in South Africa in the early 2000s, and many women were involved in using it as an effective business network. I think they even hosted an Africa region conference during that time. So we relaunched WISTA South Africa simply because there'd been a sort of a lull in activity from about 2012. And we recognized that there was a gap in the industry where women could connect with one another. WISTA, as you know, is active in 51 countries in the world with a number of a couple of thousand members, and is primarily about business networking and raising awareness of gender inclusivity issues, which was, interestingly enough, the theme of a business breakfast that AMSOL hosted in October of 2018. And at the end of that event, many of us in the room realized that it was quite important that we organized ourselves in South Africa for a number of reasons, but also because the IMO had designated 2019 as a year in which inclusivity in the maritime sector would be highlighted in a number of their events, in a number of their comms and forums. Unfortunately, we were able to get all the admin in place to be able to relaunch WISTA in South Africa in the first quarter of 2019. And since then, there's really been the most amazing sort of energy, and we've been able to achieve a lot in terms of organizing ourselves and creating a very meaningful network, not only for women who are established in the industry, but for many who are young professionals starting out in maritime, wanting to understand how their career paths could move forward and looking for support to do that.
That's interesting. I mean, I've attended a number of your live events before COVID happened, and I'm interested. Can you just share how WISTA is negotiating the COVID era and maintaining itself as a networking platform? Because essentially that's what we need to be doing at this point.
So the transition was actually quite smooth. We were lucky to have two events before lockdown hit. In January, we had our kickoff event for 2020 with a guest speaker helping us to plan our goals for the year, many of which have subsequently changed. And then we were able to celebrate International Women's Day at Law Hill Maritime Centre in Simonstown in early March with the boys and girls who are learners at the school who are focused on maritime studies. And then, of course, at the end of March, we realized that circumstances had changed, but that our network was probably more important than ever, as many of our members were facing the economic impact of the lockdown on their businesses, having to deal with dilemmas around retrenching employees. And we quickly transitioned to an online platform, which was sponsored by different member organizations and individuals. And in the beginning, we met as professional members. Really, it was almost like a support group. We met every 2 weeks to talk about what was happening in our personal and professional lives. A lot of sharing of advice, particularly for those in the HR profession. And now we've normalized a little bit more to having monthly events with guest speakers. And we've involved our associate members as well. Again, associate membership is available to young professionals who perhaps are in their first few years of work in the maritime industry, and they join us on a no-fee basis. So fortunately, we now have opened up to a more sort of general online engagement, and it's in line with an international trend in WISTA International. I actually see a lot of positive from this move to digitization, because all of a sudden we're able to connect globally and attend webinars with WISTA members in Singapore and with WISTA members in the US, and all over, sharing ideas and talking about key issues impacting our businesses, which is quite important.
And are you finding that those key issues are similar across international borders, or are we unique here in South Africa?
No, we're not unique. WISTA members are challenged by everything from going back into the office after working at home, and what does it mean post-pandemic lockdown? How do you get the courage to resume normal ways? So in some countries, their lockdown has ended and they are integrating with sort of normal business practices. So we spoke a lot about that, and I'm sure that's a normal issue that we're all facing here as well. To sort of leadership advice on how to navigate with resilience, how to bring your teams with you through these challenging times. Issues are no different. The world is a very small place in dealing with the extraordinary impact of lockdown and COVID.
And that insight, as WISTA chair here, and engaging with both international women and local women, gives you an insight into taking that back into your workplace. Now, you're, as an executive at AMSOL, which we know is one of the largest employers of people in maritime in South Africa. How do you see your role as a woman executive in that company to bring women's issues to the fore?
Well, firstly, as someone in business, we are a market leader. We want to grow our business. We want to be competitive. And to be competitive, you have to reap the benefits of a diverse workforce. It therefore makes logical business sense that the more we can normalize and integrate a diversity of talent, the more equipped we will be to face whatever the future holds. And so it is perhaps about my role as a woman, but it's really also my role as a business person. These issues should be as important to men as they are to women if you want to remain competitive. I do take the role quite personally, especially in the last few years, in terms of reaching out to young professionals and making sure that I can connect them with people who can support them in their career journey. And that's quite important to me, both personally and professionally.
Are you connecting them within the company, or do you search for connections outside of the company where possible?
I think we're very fortunate in our industry. We have women active in many subsectors and men, many subsectors, but primarily, we have metallurgists and ship auctioneers and journalists and artisans and telecommunications professionals, entrepreneurs, business owners. There's no limit. If we have someone who approaches us and says, I'm really interested in the world of offshore bunkering, well, we're spoiled for choice with women who are MDs of companies and who are technical specialists who can guide and support them. So I think I do see this as a growing area of value add that WISTA can facilitate, because we do have such a network, and that network, I must say, is not limited to South African women who are professionals in our industry. It's unlimited because we're part of an international network, and I see our connections on the continent as being an area I'd like to explore more. A marine engineer, whether they are from Ghana or Nigeria, is facing the same issues as those from South Africa, and let's just connect us all because the experience is shared.
Excellent. And what are those challenges that we're still seeing remain in the industry for women? Can you identify them, or are they generally too general?
No, I wouldn't say they're too general. I think firstly, the challenges that women face in any industry are very similar. We always speak of work-life balance as being a challenge, and I had to laugh recently. I read an article that said lockdown presents this unique challenge where people have to suddenly manage multiple roles of being parents and professionals and cleaning their homes. And I kind of thought, well, these are things that women in particular and others who are primary child care givers have to face. So I did have a good giggle, but I do think that we mustn't shy away from the serious institutional barriers, the psychological discrimination, the psychological challenge of being a minority in a workforce, particularly around the challenges that our seafarers face, ranging from sexual harassment to abuse, to bullying in the workplace, to microaggressions. But I do think that a lot of the challenges that women face right now have a lot to do with the economic impact of COVID-19. And these are challenges that both men and women have to overcome. But I do also think it's important when we talk about challenges and barriers to talk about successes and places in our industry across the multiple subsectors where inclusivity is gaining traction. And I'd like to see us talking a lot more about that, and also talking when it comes to the challenges that our seafarers face around what factors ensure that women have a positive experience at sea. We know that in our industry in particular, training and development of people is a team effort. We know that many women have experienced the wonderful results of mentorship from the men that they work with who have helped them achieve their career goals. I want us to focus on what are the factors that support that and how can we engender that in onboard culture. I'm not a seafarer, I don't speak from experience, but I think these are logical things. So that's something I'm passionate about speaking about and exploring further. Where can we multiply success? And what are the factors that will help us to do that?
And obviously, one of the factors for me is including men in that conversation. And I know I attended the Institute for Security Studies webinar yesterday, and you were on the panel. And I just noticed in the audience that there was mostly women, and it generally tends to be the case. And I suspect with many of the webinars going forward this month, we will also continue to see a predominantly woman audience. How do we make men part of this conversation?
Well, firstly, we can't make men do anything. We can't make men part of this conversation. Men need to want to be part of the conversation. As I've said before, anyone who is in business knows that if you want to be competitive, you need a multiplicity of opinions and ideas and approaches. And that means a diverse workforce. And as much, I think that's probably a very big challenge in our industry, is the idea that competing ideas within your business sometimes make you stronger, because therein lies the value in making good decisions. So I think there's a business tag there. If you are a male leader in a business, you need to be asking the women in your business what their experience is like, and how you can assist them in being successful. And I think that's quite a personal thing. I do think that a move towards having these kinds of issues being part of your plenary sessions at conferences rather than breakaway discussions is important. I know many men in our industry who do champion inclusivity, and maybe a series of conversations with them would also be very valuable. So, yeah.
That's great. I mean, I'd like to have more conversations with our male colleagues. And I think there's also an underlying misunderstanding of what women's issues maybe are, and a trivialization of some of them that they might find petty, that I find I have a few pet peeves. One of them being when I get an email addressed to Dear Sir, as an assumption that there's only a sir working at the magazine in an editor position. So that's one of my pet peeves. Let's wrap it up a little bit here. If you had to hold yourself accountable to one goal within your maritime persona for the year, what would you say that would be?
It's a very good question. Originally, WISTA South Africa had actually planned to host a WISTA Africa Regional Conference in Cape Town in November. We need to go back to the drawing board on that. And I would very much like to at least create some kind of online forum so that we can connect within Africa and discuss some of these issues which are common to us all, and create a very strong base off of which both men and women can have productive conversations around normalizing a diverse workforce and the inclusion of women. So that, as you say, it's not sort of like an August month of focus. It's an everyday accepted celebration of how everyone has a role to play in our industry, which is such an exciting one.
Do you think South African men are ready to join WISTA? Are you ready?
I know of many who have been waiting for an opportunity to have input. There are a number of national WISTA associations that are, where the members themselves have decided that they would like that space for themselves, and I think that must be respected. At the end of the day, we'd like to have many conversations with men in our industry, and our membership will find their way towards that in a way that's productive for everyone.
Thank you, Claire, for joining me.